Hey, you're listening to Agamemnon from the Bren System. This is Wumble, channel of the Bren System. I have yet another thing I want to talk about, but I'm not angry this time. This is just something that's been on my mind that I really need to talk about. So many of you might know, and quite a lot more of you might not know, that I am a survivor of an organized abusive group. I made a video actually discussing as much of that as I'm comfortable sharing. It's called Context, so if you're actually interested, you can go check that out. But that is about as much detail as I'm willing to go into. I won't go into detail today though. However, the long and short of it is, I spent the first 19 years of my life in a very, hierarchical, controlling environment in which the people around me subscribed to some very, very disturbing ideological concepts. Some very weird spiritual beliefs and some very, very weird political beliefs. You know the drill. I'm sure that a good number of you will be somewhat familiar with how cults work. And I was unlucky enough to be born into that type of environment. And even though I am recovering from the massive trauma I went through and improving my life and also working on being an advocate for survivors of abuse, there's a persistent problem that I've been running into a lot. And that is that even though the average person might claim that they have no ill will towards us, the fact of the matter is a lot of yous don't see us as human beings. And I mean, it's a very subtle kind of dehumanization, where it's not like we're being treated as lesser humans, it's more like we're being treated as if we're fictional characters of some kind. And I know what the reason is. I know it's because a lot of yous kind of consume true crime, right? And consume is the key word there, because it's okay to engage with true crime content like documentaries and journalism relating to violent and abusive things. It's okay to want to be informed on those things. And I actually encourage people to be informed. But the way most people are engaging with true crime is that they're treating it like entertainment. And so they're treating victims like entertainment. And that is a major hurdle for me when I'm trying to, teach people about what I've been through. I had one very specific experience that hammered this home for me. It was really rough. I was in art school at the time. I think I was in my second year. And basically during a discussion of our works and inspirations, I had happened to very offhandedly and carefully mention that my experiences of being religiously traumatized were kind of a major part of who I am as an artist. I kind of spoke about it on my own terms. I didn't get into too much detail. I just brought it up. I have religious trauma and that seeps into my work, and that's a very big part of who I am. And after the discussion was done, this girl in my class came up to me. No hate to this girl necessarily. I don't think she intended to treat me so badly. I think it was just like a momentary lapse of behavior. But even so, it was very indicative of how the average person treats cult survivors in the wild. She came to me excited, right? First of all, why are you excited to meet someone who's traumatized? And she was all, oh my god, you're a cult survivor, that's so cool. Can you tell me your story? That sounds so interesting. Tell me your story. And it hurt to be talked to that way about something so traumatic and personal, but I tried to be nice. I told her, look, I personally don't feel comfortable opening up about something so personal with someone I barely know. Sorry about that. But the way this girl reacted was just straight up dehumanizing. She said to me, oh, but I'm so curious. I really want to know. You have to tell me. Come on, open up. It's okay. I'm a good listener. And the fact that she doubled down, that's what upset me. She didn't even allow me to lay a boundary. And I had to calmly explain to her, this isn't a story. It's not a movie or a documentary or a TV show, it's my life. It's 19 years of debilitating trauma, and it's actually a little bit rude to expect me to open up about it when I don't want to. When somebody tells you that they don't want to talk about something because it's personal and sensitive, you should respect that, because I don't like being treated like more of a spectacle than a person. It's a little bit dehumanizing, to be honest. And you know, I could have been a lot more harsh about it. I could have been openly angry, but I didn't want to be. I didn't want to get into some argument while I was at uni. I just didn't have the energy for it. And honestly, I like to believe that being a nice guy is just the way to go. Just be as polite and considerate as you can manage, which evidently is not something that this girl was considering, because she then told me I was being a dick about it. Whew, and that really was cruel, if I'm honest. I know she's probably not a cruel person, but that behavior was cruel. And sure, it could have been blamed on the fact that this was shortly after lockdown and some people just weren't knowing how to behave. That's why I said, like, no hate to her. I'm sure that normally she's a lot more careful, and I very much hope that wherever she is now, that she's kind of learned to not behave that way, and to not treat traumatized people as if they are a source of entertainment and intrigue. We are human beings. There are a lot of reasons I think this happens. One of them is that fact that people are engaging with true crime in an unhealthy way. I mean, I also like to read and watch all sorts of informative stuff. I like to learn about morbid things just as much as I like to learn anything else. I'm a curious person, and knowledge is power, you know. But it's all about the way you approach these things. You cannot treat real life issues like they're fiction. And that strings into another reason I think this happens, which is that people in a general sense at large aren't very media literate. And I know media literacy has kind of become a buzzword that most people don't even understand what it means anymore. But the particular aspect of media literacy that's important to this discussion is understanding the barriers between reality and fiction. A fictional character is just a creative work, you know, they're just something that somebody wrote. Whereas a person is a whole human being, like that's a human person. And unfortunately, a lot of people, even though they would consciously say they probably know the difference, tend to act as if they don't. Now, don't get me wrong, it's far from an epidemic. It's not like we as a society can't tell the difference between a fictional character and a human being. But there is definitely a corner of the culture that is not particularly a fan of nuance. Twitter. I'm talking about Twitter, okay? Sorry, X. I'm talking about Mr. Musk's wild ride, okay? Whatever it's called this evening. For someone who hates trans people so much, Elon Musk sure likes to change names, But my point is, it's Twitter culture, which encourages people to speak quickly and not think. And you can be a pretty smart and educated person and still get into that trap. You can still get lured into that trap of ignoring nuance and just talking, but it's a really, really dangerous trap. And it can ruin your ability to maintain a normal social experience. Like, you're going to make people uncomfortable if you allow yourself to think like that on a daily basis, or to behave like that. You know, if you end up walking around with this mentality that anything and everything is a fun topic to talk about and not think about. As much as I love to yap, I always put a lot of thought into what I'm going to say. It's important to be conscious of the world around you and to try and consider things from multiple angles before you open your mouth. And in fact, a lot of people who are infected with this Twitter brainworm will probably hear this and think, but anon, some people struggle to have a normal social experience because they're autistic. But let me tell you something real quick. I'm autistic, and you cannot treat autistic adults as if we are a monolith when we're all very different. And being autistic does not mean, and whereas autism can put up certain barriers in having a normal social life, it doesn't mean that you should just remain clueless. And if I'm quite honest, operating off the assumption that autistic adults are clueless and childish and don't know how to communicate by default is actually very ableist. So don't come at me with that fake woke fucking waste man talk, okay? It makes me sick to my stomach. If your response to the conversation on treating other people with respect and respecting boundaries is to bring up autistic people, you are not behaving like an activist. You are behaving like a contrarian, just throwing out gotchas, which is the problem with Twitter's culture and with modern social media in general. Because modern social media culture does not reward intelligence, compassion, or decency. It simply rewards whoever speaks the loudest and the fastest, and that can be really unhealthy for you and the people around you. And the third reason I think this happens is maybe gonna sound like a reach, but it's not, and it is a lack of broader understanding on what feminism is. And I know. Give me a moment, bear with me, let me put you on game with this, okay? I will explain. It is very interesting to me that a woman, specifically a woman, called me basically a dick for not wanting to be objectified and ogled at. I think that's indicative of a real problem. Because I'm sure if you were to ask her, are you a feminist? This person would have probably said, oh, of course, I believe in intersectionality and helping marginalized people, obviously. Of course I'm a feminist. But in the moment when it really counted, the way she behaved was very unfeminist. The way she behaved was quite parallel to how misogynists behave, by which I mean treating someone who's in a vulnerable position as if you're entitled to their time and as if their privacy means nothing to you. And this is not me calling this girl in particular a bad feminist, believe me, because this is a greater societal issue. A lot of people have that kind of liberal mindset where in spirit they support people who are worse off than them, but they also refuse to actually interrogate and understand the systems that are in place that harm vulnerable people, or that make us vulnerable to begin with. This is an issue with liberal feminism in general. Feminism in big air quotes. Liberal feminism is barely feminism at all. It has the aesthetic of feminism. I have to stop saying the word feminism though, because it doesn't sound like a real word anymore. Oh, feminism. But you get my point. The right are always saying that progressivism has, taken over, that it's become mainstream. But let's be real, if feminism really had become mainstream, then people would be respecting each other's boundaries and privacy. Because one of the core tenets of feminism is promoting respect for people's individual autonomy and their right to privacy, and their right to have some control over their own life. And if people feel comfortable enough approaching me and basically demanding that I sacrifice that autonomy and control, that I just hand over the keys to my privacy for their own entertainment, then we are clearly not living in a culture that is oozing progressivism right now. But that's not I'm not being a doomsday crier here, I'm telling you that this is the time to take action. I mean, with the way things are politically in the world right now, speaking up is more important than ever. People who have these marginalized experiences, we have to speak. And of course, be careful, don't put yourself in any danger speaking too carelessly, but do speak. I live on Turf Island. Does that mean that feminism is unsalvageable? No. It means that we need to rescue feminism from these conservative idiots. Real activism and progressivism that actually stems from compassion and a desire to free everybody from the hierarchical structures that do us harm. And I think that the only way for me to improve this situation for me and people like me is to advocate, which is why experiences like that are not gonna shut me up. So what if someone was really inconsiderate and objectified me about my status as a cult survivor? There are other people out there who will respect me, who will listen to me, and maybe some of them are listening right now. Thank you. I'm sure this is a frustration that a lot of people can relate to. But remember, the average person does not mean harm. As long as we all kind of communicate and stick together, at the end of the day, things might just work out. It all might be okay. I mean, look at me, right? 4 years ago, I was homeless, I was struggling really badly with my mental health. And don't worry about the homeless thing, I wasn't street homeless, right? A lot of people jump to street homeless. I was living in a precarious situation. I was in temporary housing that was given to me on a emergency basis. I was still very much in my no fixed abode era though, I was homeless. I was homeless, I was struggling really badly with my mental health, I was struggling financially, my social life was all over the place. And now 4 years later, I have a home, I have friends who love me and I love them. I'm doing better in my career than I ever have before. Even if you have also had some pretty bad experiences where people have treated you badly for some marginalized status that you hold, remember that all you have to do is hold your head up high, keep your head in the game, slide to the left, slide to the right, okay? Step this way, step that way. A Macarena, anything is possible. That's my conclusion to this vlog. Thank you. Thank you.